Welcome to Let's Play Battlefield 1942. On today's episode we have the Battle of Kursk. This is another one of the Eastern Front battles, so it's between the Russians and the Germans. And unlike Berlin and Stalingrad, this one's actually outside, but it doesn't really look like Kharkov. It's probably the closest thing we have to a nighttime map on this game, at least on the vanilla version of Battlefield 1942. It's pretty dark out there, about sunset or maybe it's sunrise, depending on your perspective. It's also the only map in this game that has only two flags. That's in addition to the two uncapturable bases. And the two flags are relatively close together, not quite close enough to throw a grenade from one flag to the next, but pretty close. I like to roll up to this flag first in a tank because it's a lot easier to capture this flag in a tank compared to the other one, which is even more constricted. I've also noticed in playing this map that the Russians seem to get to that eastern flag quicker, and the Germans always seem to end up at the western flag first. This is the Battle of Kursk, but those who know the history of the Battle of Kursk might be expecting a lot more tanks because it was the biggest tank battle in history. There are a number of tanks. I think there are 3 at each main base, and the flag to the west spawns an additional tank along with 2 artillery pieces that spawn here at the eastern flag. But other than that, no tanks. It's not quite like, say, Aberdeen, which is what Battlefield 1942 players would probably recognize as the big tank battle. But it's still a pretty decent map. It can get old if you play it for too long, since there's only 2 flags, but it's interesting. There are a lot of different ways to defend the flags. As an engineer, you can put explosive packs, because the flags tend to have small capture radiuses and relatively small spawn radiuses as well. And a lot of people like to sneak around along the edges of the map because this takes place in kind of a valley. I would also point out that there are 2 planes on each side's main base, and they don't have a lot of room to maneuver because the map is pretty small. And there's only 1 anti-aircraft gun to deal with those planes on the entire map. It's over here at the eastern side, just up the hill. Right over there in that little sandbag area. Only 1 flak gun. So control of this eastern base, although it only spawns the artillery, which is not as useful as the heavy tank at the west, it's still very important if you've got really skilled pilots on either side. Of course, since there are only 2 flags on this map, ticket bleed can only be inflicted upon the enemy if you hold both of the flags. Otherwise, no ticket bleed at all. There are a lot of opportunities for people to sneak up on the bases on this round. I'm going to show off the, well, maybe not from this angle, but the Russian artillery is kind of awkward to use because you can't quite aim it properly when you're in the gunner seat. You have to switch to the external view really to get an idea of where you're firing. But as I was saying earlier, a lot of opportunities to sneak up on the flags by going over on the mountainsides just outside the valley and then swinging around back to attack them. There are also a lot of opportunities to do a defense in depth, which is defending a position by hiding just outside of the position, and then when the enemy reveals itself to attack the flag, you ambush them from the heights. The flag capture radius is very small over here, especially on the western flag. Typically you're going to want to sit in between the piles of logs. But as you can see, trying to attack that flag really leaves you vulnerable because you don't have a lot of room to maneuver or hide in. there's a hostile tank down there, and I can't really do much about that as a medic. The guy who just spawned in next to me is an engineer, so he could potentially try to plant some landmines on it. You can really sneak up on the flags just by hiding behind the sandbags. And I accidentally killed the engineer, but he did destroy one of the tanks with a landmine, I believe. So I'm in a better position to attack this flag. When opposing sides hold the flags, obviously they're very close to each other, so you can expect lots and lots and lots of infantry action back and forth, and a lot of grenade throwing. At any given moment, you can pretty much guarantee that there's going to be an invasion from one side or the other. Yeah, I've got a 20-second spawn time now. That would be due to the team kill from earlier with that grenade. One thing you definitely don't want to have to do on this map is spawn back in at the main base. It does provide an opportunity for you to bring up the vehicles from the rear, which is important, but when other people take the tanks and the planes, which they usually do, it's kind of annoying to try to trek all the way back to the flags. Alright, I'm going to see if I can capture this flag. As you can see, I'm an engineer here. If you don't have friendly fire on the server you're on for landmines, it's always a good idea to just stuff landmines everywhere. They really blend in well with the dark green grass in this map. And I just tossed a landmine out there for that enemy Jeep to ram me with. The reason why I was shooting at that Jeep is because if you just stand there and do nothing, they may suspect that you're an engineer and you've set a landmine trap for them. Whereas if you shoot at them, it gives them the idea that you're desperately trying to kill them with that weapon, or it just distracts them. But if you just stand there after throwing out a landmine waiting for them to run you over, you may as well be rubbing your hands together with glees, really making it obvious that you've got a landmine trap. A lot of enemy infantry over here, but the only way they can capture that flag is being almost right up on it. So it's a lot easier to counterattack them. They've got very limited options if they want to stay within that radius. This tent over here is where the heavy tank spawns in. With any luck, I can stay hidden from that tank. It's very difficult for tanks to get right up on the capture radius in a tank on this flag. And that would be the heavy tank that just spawned in. As soon as it spawns in, you always want to charge right out from the tent, because it's very likely you're either going to get bombed by somebody, maybe hit by a rocket. You really want to stay on the move. Stay tuned for part 2 of Kursk.